Hi everybody, this is Sam with Spieler Custom Baits, and today we're going to be tying a lime green and white crappie jig. We're going to start off with a 1/16 ounce jig head. This was actually a pre-made jig head. I removed the collar with some tin snips. This is kind of the traditional crappie bait, marabou crappie bait. I'm going to start off with a little bit of adhesive here, using loon hardhead, just to make sure that we bind our thread to the shank of the hook. We're using a white 120 denier thread. And we're going to take that all the way down to the bend and then double back on it, coming all the way back up to the front. And cut off this tag end. And we're going to grab ourselves a white marabou blood quill. And when using these, I like to use the tips. We're going to tie this going up towards the front to lock it kind of in place, and then tying back so that we get it in the position that we want on the back end of that hook, and then cutting off the excess. Making sure that we get it right where we want on that hook, and then drawing that back up to the front of the jig. We're then going to grab a little bit of chartreuse flash, going around the jig, around the hook shank, and then tying that in where I want it along the top side of the marabou. It's just going to add a little bit of an attractant, catch the crappie's eyes. And before tying that totally in, you can take and manipulate that flashabou so that it sits in this position that you want it to. Just moving it off to the side to make sure that it evenly coats where I want it, and then tying that down into place. Getting very close to cutting my own thread there on the actual hook point. Now I'm just pulling that up and kind of cleaning up. Now I'm going to be taking some of this lime green crystal flash chenille and tying this in. take a little bit off the tag end just so that I get a good clean tie in, and then I tie back on it and bring it back up, bring my thread back up to the jig head, and then I apply even pressure while I'm making my wraps. And then in between wraps, I like to try to brush it back just to make sure that those fibers are bunching up towards the last wrap. It allows for a much fuller body, and it gives a little bit more even wrapping. As you can tell, I'm pinching it and holding it just to keep that even pressure while I'm going up and around the shank of the jig. You can also use a brush for this. And then I like to go pretty close up to the collar before I do my tie-in. That way it stays kind of bunched up along the hook. And then when I do my tie-ins, I like to go get a wrap on both sides and then do it twice. That second lock in just kind of helps make sure that it stays in place. Then we're going to clip off our chenille. And we'll move forward to the whip finish. Making sure we lock in that head. And off to our whip finish. And I whip finish most of my jigs twice. Just as an insurance knot on that second one. And cut off that thread. I like to add a little bit of adhesive along that thread just to make sure that it's locked in. And add a little bit to the top of my jig head just to prevent a little bit of chipping on the paint. And then I like to pull back my flash, and I like to cut my flash a little bit longer than my tail. And there we have it. It's the finished green and white product there. The lime green crappie jig with flash.